it's the biggest gap that we've ever seen between the non-farm payrolls and this labor dynamics survey from the same institute, ultimately, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So we've never seen such a big gap. And I don't really find anyone convincingly able to tell me the true difference between the two. They typically correlate very well over time. So I guess either of the two surveys will have to give in at some point when they are revised once again. The labor dynamics survey basically looks recessionary for Q2 last year. Reason being that it actually shows a net job loss in the US economy in the second quarter last year. And it is a gauge designed to try and measure the net job creation from the net birth minus the net death of establishments. And it is in sharp contrast to what we see in the non-farm payrolls report month in and month out, where we see a lot of jobs added due to a very high ratio between new companies entering the survey relative to the amount of companies defaulting during the same period. And as far as I can see from the BLS, we don't have exact numbers for business death rates outside of, I think, Q4 21 still. So the data lags extremely by an extreme time frame, while we have confirmed data up until Q2 last year on establishments being born during 22. So we are still kind of guessing when it comes to this birth rate of establishments relative to death rates of establishments. And I think the reason is that all of the aid packages created during the pandemic has wreaked havoc with methodologies from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And right now, I guess we sort of artificially find death rates of establishments at extremely low levels because of aid packages allowing them to stay alive for longer. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they hire or that they run sound business models. It's actually the same if you look across the West. We have death rates of establishments at extremely low levels post the pandemic, and I'm not entirely sure that I buy it. I think it's related to the aid packages of the pandemic.
Okay, so if I guess the answer to that question is unclear, at least looking at those two sets of data anyway, and the divergence between them, why is that question, the answer to that question, of major relevance to asset class performance this year, do you think?
Imagine if the recession is already behind us. It would be super weird, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. And the only reason why we are stuck in this discussion without being able to provide the true answer is that most key figures have struggled to clearly assess the economic momentum since the pandemic. You can see it across purchasing manager indices, labor market reports, and so on and so forth. They've struggled due to the volatility of the pandemic, and they are not as precise as they were in 2019. And it would be the first time in history, as far as I'm concerned, that we would discuss a recession in hindsight. And if you look at the asset allocation right now, it is right about every asset manager out there is expecting a recession within a time frame of, say, 6 to 12 months from here. And therefore, I would suppose that it would wrongfoot many if the recession is already behind us. I'm not saying that it's my base case that we end up concluding that, but it would be an extremely weird scenario relative to what we've penciled in as the base case for most asset allocation models for this year. Frankly speaking, the discussion we've had so far this year is whether the recession will commence during the first half of the year or the second half of the year, right? And I think most asset managers entered the year with a base case of a recession commencing in the first half of the year. And that consensus is slowly but surely moving to the second half of the year. So everyone and their mother is stuck in a discussion on whether to asset allocate with the expectation of a recession in the near-term horizon. And if the recession was already last year, then I guess everyone would be wrong-footed in their positioning.